All right, and we are live. Welcome everyone to the first episode of our new podcast, True DataOps. I'm your host, Kent Graziano, the Data Warrior. We want to bring you a podcast that's going to cover all things DataOps with the people that are making DataOps what it is today. And I'm honored today to have as our first guest, Wayne Eckerson, the founder and principal consultant at Eckerson Group. He's an internationally recognized industry expert and thought leader, known for his consultancy, presentations, and his widely read books, The Secrets of Analytic Leaders, Insights from Information Insiders, and Performance Dashboards, Measuring, Monitoring, and Managing Your Business. Wayne was also instrumental in helping us develop the philosophy of True DataOps, and he's a co-author on our book, DataOps for Dummies. Welcome to the show, Wayne. Good to see you.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, it's great to be here with you.
So before we dive into our far-ranging, as I'm sure it will be, discussion on DataOps, could you give our audience a little bit more about your background in data management, what you've been up to, for those that don't know you?
Yeah, so I've been in the data and analytics space for 30 years now. Hard to believe. Worked as an analyst for many years, and went to the Data Warehousing Institute, where I was kind of the face of that organization, ran its education and then its research group, and a lot of other things. Then I started Eckerson Group, which is a research and consulting firm specializing in data and analytics. So we help companies build data strategies, modernize their data architectures, implement data ops, self-service, data mesh, all that good stuff.
Yeah, now that you've mentioned it, I guess I remember I used to read your reports there at TDWI back in the day when I first got started in the space myself.
Yeah, TDWI launched a lot of careers.
Yeah, that was a good place to get going. So I just want to jump in here. Overall, what do you see happening out there in the data space these days? Obviously, we're here to talk about data ops, but what else is hot out there today?
Well, as everybody knows, data mesh and data fabric are kind of sucking all the oxygen out of the room right now. There's a lot of debate about what they really are and what they're not, and what drives what. And obviously, Eckerson Group is putting its 2 cents into that discussion, and as we like to do, dive into the details, sort everything out, and present it in a very workable, intelligent, understandable way. So count on that. But we're also seeing a couple of other things going on. The data governance space has been gaining momentum the last number of years. We're doing a lot of consulting on data governance, helping companies start programs, optimize their existing programs, which in a lot of cases stall out before they get a lot of momentum. On the technology side, last year and the year before were kind of the years of the data catalog, right? But I think a lot of those projects have stalled. And what we're seeing now is the vendors who deliver those are turning these data catalogs into data governance platforms and leveraging the metadata that they collect in ways to actually do some work, to activate actions, as they say, whether it's collaboration, alerts, automating classification. And this, data governance is so fundamental to creating a data-driven organization, because if people don't trust the data, they're not going to use it, right? So this is a huge area, and what we're seeing now is these data catalogs are morphing into data intelligence or data governance platforms and driving this automation that's needed especially in the era of big data. You just can't manually curate all this data. So automation through active metadata is a huge topic that we're seeing. And another one that I'm personally covering at Eckerson Group is data sharing and data marketplaces, which is somewhat related to data mesh, which is all about creating data products. But in the data marketplace, there's no debate about what a data product is, unlike in the data mesh space where no one can agree. In a data marketplace, where buyers and sellers or providers and consumers come together to exchange data, there's no debate what a data product is. It's a something that's been packaged up and put out there, typically for sale, right? With enough metadata and sample data and ways for consumers to actually touch, feel, and smell and sniff the quality and character of this data for them to want to consume it or buy it. The neat thing about the whole data marketplace, data sharing space is that it's morphing into what I call deep integration, where, in the old days, you used to buy a data file and it came to you on a CD or a file transfer protocol, or more recently an API. But now we're seeing companies actually build pipelines from the supplier right into the data warehouse or data lake of the consumer in a format that they can easily adapt into their own model. So this deep integration is removing the friction on the buy side and the sell side of companies who want to exchange or share data, whether it's externally or in a case of a data mesh internally. We need data marketplaces internally to drive data mesh. So anyway, full circle there.
Yeah. No, and I definitely saw a lot of that when I was working with customers at Snowflake and who are utilizing Snowflake's data marketplace capabilities and data sharing capabilities. And I think, like you said, from a marketplace perspective, it's a lot easier to get your head wrapped around this concept of a data product because we are so used to Amazon and having a basket to, where we picked a couple of things that ended up in your basket and you check out. And, data marketplace is kind of starting to look the same way, where you're going to go get a bunch of data, which is the data product. It's a lot easier to get your heads wrapped around that than, I'll say, some of the more esoteric definitions that are out there. So with all these things that are going on, though, where do you see true data ops really fitting in, and how does it help? I know one of our pillars of the 7 pillars of true data ops is around governance, and you just kind of mentioned that becoming a lot bigger. So what are you seeing out there? What's your take on where data ops and the philosophy of true data ops fits into this bigger data picture of what's happening in the industry?
Yeah, data ops, in my opinion, is critical. It's both technology, process, and a mindset. So I think it's been hard for because of that, it's hard for a lot of people to really wrap their minds around what it is. As a mindset, it's really about getting your development team together, with building data pipelines or delivering dashboards and reports, whatever kind of data and analytics artifact it is, and figuring out what are the bottlenecks that are preventing us from delivering faster, better, cheaper to meet the needs of our customers and keep them happy and satisfied. And then knocking those down one by one, reserving some time as a team to actually address the bottlenecks. So the mindset, I think, is the first and most important thing is, let's develop on our team a mindset of continuous improvement and reserve time to do that. From a technology perspective, the pillars kind of go through the whole list of things that you really need. And I can't argue with any of those. They're all needed, right? From ELT to CI/CD, data observability. I think that, in my opinion, one of the more important ones, which is critical for automation, is testing. Having a real strong commitment to continuous testing, both in the development cycle and in the execution window, and reusing those tests. Because if you're not testing elaborately the inputs and outputs to every step in your pipeline, things are going to break down. And you're not going to know where or how, and you're not going to be alerted before it's too late and things crash, right?
Kind of hard to do continuous integration if you're not testing, right? Because it'd be one thing to be rolling things out and just automating, pushing it to production. But yeah, if you're not testing, then what are you putting into production, right? The odds of things breaking, especially as you get into more and more complex ecosystems, and the number of data pipelines and all of that grows and grows as you get all these different data. If you're not testing it, then is that going to really work for people?
Yeah. And it's DataOps is really about bringing some of the things we learned in software engineering into the world of data, and treating data as code. And that's a little bit tricky because of the nature of data, right? This fungible asset, and but it's products like Snowflake, which you mentioned earlier, that are making it possible to actually treat data as code with things like time travel and the zero code cloning, right? Zero copy cloning.
Yeah.
That enables you to kind of create these copies of your data without actually replicating it, so you can roll back and create versions and things like that. So that's pretty cool. And people are finally getting control over their dev, test, prod environments, be able to spin things up quickly and put things into production more quickly that are tested and provide users with a lot more confidence as a result.
Yeah, I think one of the confusions probably and misunderstandings out there is this concept of treating data as code and what that really means. You just mentioned, dev, test, and prod, zero copy cloning, and time travel, and those allow us to do things like version the data, right? Because we've been doing this for, I remember the first real software company I worked back in the early 90s. We were manually doing version control with, I think it was RCS. We were on Unix, and everything that we did, we had to create a new version, and we had branching and merging way back then in the 90s, but nobody ever was able to figure out how do you do that with data. And I guess that's the beauty of the newer technologies, but also this idea that we're talking about data ops, is applying the same disciplines that we did for software development, even before they called it DevOps, right? Long before they called it DevOps, anybody who was good at this, we applied versioning, and you did testing. You didn't just, write a new program and put it into production, even if it did compile. Remember that old joke? Hey, it compiled. But I mean,
the real DataOps practitioners, the amount of tests they have per lines of code is really high, and they take great pride in their test beds, right? And their depth of tests that they run continuously.
Yeah, so that's really one of the, I guess, keys to success there in, applying, I'll say, DevOps thinking. And like you said, it's a mindset to data, is that, depth of testing, and then making it automated, right? We're not talking about a bunch of SQL coders sitting around and running SQL statements manually against the data set, right?
Right.
Because that's not going to scale very far, very fast.
No, but you wouldn't believe how many people still do it that way.
Yeah. So I guess why is that? Let me ask you that. Somebody asked me this question before. It's like, why has the data world been so slow to adopting this concept of testing? And like I said, it is one of the 7 pillars of true data ops is the testing. Why do you think it's been so slow to adopt? At least you're seeing people still write manual SQL statements to kind of test things here and there.
Yeah, I think that's because it's the way they've always done it, and they've had moderate success with it, right? And they may not know any other way. So is
it that they haven't had a disaster yet?
Yeah, haven't had a disaster yet. Yeah, they haven't felt the pain that would impel them to go to their boss and ask for, a lot of money to get to, or a certain amount of money to buy tools, right? So So I think there's a little bit of a resource issue, but it's also an enlightenment and training issue too.
Yeah. So along that, it's like, what tips do you have for an organization and that they might, follow to kind of improve their maturity in their data management practice? Because that's what we're really talking about here, right?
Oof, yeah,
One or two. I know you've probably you've written books on this, so.
I mean, that's a loaded question, but I think it actually all boils down to what I kind of hinted at earlier, which is going after your bottlenecks, right? And the bottlenecks we've always seen was traditionally IT, right? IT was too slow. It built things that users, by the time they delivered them, users didn't want anymore, or it didn't build what they actually wanted, because it's hard to know what the users actually do want. They don't know themselves, right? So it's a broken process, even outside of data and analytics, but same is true in data analytics. But inside our space, we're also seeing bottlenecks on the data analyst, right? People have questions. The data analyst who's embedded in the department is supposed to be the person who answers those questions. Well, there's never enough analysts. Or companies do hire a whole bunch of them sprinkled across the organization. And the executives aren't aware that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on manual data analysis in the form of these data analysts. But more recently, we've seen that the bottleneck has resided in the data engineers, right? Because we've given data analysts these fancy new self-service analytical tools, right? But they can't get new data. So now they're reliant on data engineers to go find the data and ingest it and clean it up to a certain degree, model it, and give it to the data analyst, who then manipulates it and creates a dashboard and gives it to the business user. So we have this whole workflow, right? And there's bottlenecks all along the way. And frankly, self-service and data ops have been, first of all, self-service is the mantra that we can use to go and address that bottleneck. But self-service is a very complicated topic, even though on the surface it seems pretty brain dead simple. Give users easy tools and let them go get their own data. Well, it's never that easy, and that's why we need data ops. We need data ops to make it really easy to ingest new data and really automate
and govern it at the same time, and make sure that we're not letting data through that shouldn't be going through, exposing data that shouldn't be exposed. Just because an analyst had access to it doesn't mean it should end up in the production platform for everyone to see.
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into addressing these bottlenecks, and I've been writing about it for 30 years. But it does come down to people, processes, and how you align your teams and the technology that you give them. So, and we keep kind of vacillating. Okay, now it's data mesh. That's going to liberate the business so they can, do their own thing more quickly than in a, centralized monolithic data warehouse, data lake environment. But that's not necessarily true. The same principles that you need to succeed with a data mesh, which is self-service and governance, are the same principles you need to succeed with centralized data management as well, to be honest with you. Some of it's just hard work, rolling up your sleeves and coming up with a good operating model for your data and analytics environment. It's not just your enterprise team, but how do they relate to all the people who are doing data analytics across the organization? So I've been writing a lot recently about operating models or, organizational alignment. How do you organize your teams to do development, to implement the data ops properly, right? So I always say there should be some kind of a purple team between your enterprise team and your business teams. That purple team can take a lot of different forms and shapes, but in most cases they should be building stuff. Whoever that purple team is, using data ops principles and technologies.
Yeah, and so the purple team is, I assume you're using the term purple like purple squirrel, right? This is a bunch of unique individuals who can actually put all this together in a way that other people can use it. That's enabling the self-service, right?
I haven't heard of purple squirrels, but that's pretty close. I use it at TDWI. We used to have this mantra, purple people, right? They weren't red in the business or blue in IT, and those are just arbitrary colors we assign to those two groups. They're not politically affiliations of any sort.
Oh, good.
But to really succeed with data analytics, you need to have a blend of business and technical
That's why
skill.
it's purple, red and blue.
That's why it's purple, right? So
okay.
When I put together the operating model, we have the enterprise data analytics team is blue, right? And that's a pretty darn big team if you're going to really succeed with it. You can't scrimp on that team, and most companies do, except the data-driven ones. You go into those companies, and they got like 200 plus people on their data analytics team, right? In most companies, it's less than 10. And then on the red is the business, and we've got power users there. We've got business analysts, data analysts there. We've got managers of data analytics. We have data stewards. So there's people in the business who are either consuming data or preparing data. And then with the data mesh, you've always had some departments that are really advanced, and they've gone out and hired their own data engineers and data analysts and data developers, right? And those are the data mesh data domains, really, I think. Were already building their own stuff because they couldn't get it fast enough from the central team. So how do you blend the blue team with whatever's going on or not on the red side, right? Well, you need this layer in the middle. Figuring that out, I think, is a real key to success. And it's, those teams really need a really well thought out data platform, which has to include DataOps for it to succeed. It needs a good cloud data platform like Snowflake as well. Probably needs a data access governance tool like Immuta, Privacera, Infovia. Probably needs a data observability tool like Monte Carlo. So, your core platform that everyone builds to, purple team, red team, blue team, needs to be, I think, really well thought out, integrated, and made to be abstracted so it's easy enough for anyone to use. In fact, you and I were in that session at the Snowflake event when we heard Roche Pharmaceuticals talk about their data platform. I just described what they did just now, right? They were using the DataOps.live as well as those other products I mentioned to create this self-service data platform to support what they're calling a data mesh.
Yeah, and they worked really hard at coming up with the right platform, the right organizational structure, the right processes, and having that purple team that could educate everyone and help put together templates and all that to make it easier.
Templates are key to this whole thing. The thing that they need to do in every data mesh implementation is it's easy to get your data domain teams, which probably already existed, to start building data products. The key is how do you keep them aligned with each other so that they don't spin out into separate orbits or data silos, which I think is the big challenge.
I think that is one of the risks of the data mesh world is people who don't really dive into it and understand the intent, like Roche did, could easily back themselves into data silos where they think they're working on a data mesh, but in fact they've got data replicated across different domains and it's being represented differently by each domain. If there isn't that, I like your purple team in the middle there saying, okay, we need to apply some standards, we need to apply some organizational enterprise level integration thinking on this as well so that we're not doing that sort of thing. Now, one of the things I did want to bring back up, I think implied in what you were saying before, do you agree that it's not necessary to implement a data mesh these days in order to be successful in the data world? Is that a true statement?
No, you don't need to implement the data mesh. As I said,
And I think that's an important message for people, because a lot of people are starting to go down the road. It's like, oh, if we're not doing data mesh, we're doing it wrong. Well, no, there's a lot of ways to do these things.
well, I would submit that most organizations, you're probably doing data mesh to some degree, because there's always finance and marketing that are way ahead of everyone else, and probably have their own teams and databases and and engineers, right? And you're dealing with them already and trying to keep them aligned with the rest of the organization and establishing some standards that they, as well as everyone else, can adhere to, while you're helping legal and human resources who have nothing and no interest in doing anything. So I think most organizations are very much hybrid. They've got some data mesh, they've got some data lake, they've got some centralized development, they've got some decentralized development, and it's a hard job,
Yeah.
to sit on top of one of these things.
And managing all of that at scale, do you think it's really possible long-term for an organization to be successful if they're not, at least looking at and trying to adopt some of the true data ops mindset?
No, I always, when I first came across data ops, I thought, well, this is the missing ingredient. This is what we've been missing for 30 years or whatever, 25 years when I first came across it. Because, we've always, data development, data applications, they've always been kind of artisanal, right? They've been built by one or two people who had a lot of talent and enthusiasm. But, it's not industrial scale, which is what data ops gives us. And artisanal stuff is so fragile, so brittle. If the person leaves, all the knowledge goes with them.
Yeah.
They probably don't think about how to maintain what they built, so they don't add the testing, as we talked about earlier. So artisanal is just not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to deliver the scale that you need. Data ops envelops the technology, the practices, and the people to kind of industrialize your data development and help turn you into a true data-driven organization. Everyone says that, but no one really knows how to do it, right?
And that's where we are now, is people learning how to do that, moving that whole, like you said, the software development, DevOps mindset into the data world. All right, so one final question for you, Wayne, that, totally off of the data thing. If you didn't do data, what would you be doing?
Oh, well, I've had a number of other lives before this, so I'll start with those. For a number of years, I was a high school history teacher. So,
okay.
Very few people know that. And then I was a journalist, right? And I think those are the two best professions to lay a groundwork in how you think and how you communicate of any out there. Once you do those two, you can do anything, because people think I actually, can code for a living. Well, I just know how to communicate. I just know how to learn and synthesize and then communicate what I've learned really well. And I think those are skills that everyone in our industry needs. And, I also went to a liberal arts school. I didn't get a business degree. I didn't get a computer science degree or engineering degree.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think, I think we need more people studying humanities, even if they end up being a coder or an engineer, to have that ability to kind of have a versatile mind that can think outside the box and think critically.
I agree.
It's going to help you
100%. Yeah. I have, my degree is actually environmental science, but my favorite class was Greek moral philosophy. And learning the Socratic method, which turns out was very useful for doing data models and working with business people to find out, what do they really mean when they say customer? And you're right. That's a skill that if people are simply trained in the technology, then they don't have the ability to make that, to cross that barrier, to be part of that purple team, right?
Yeah.
That those are some of the skills that you need there. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in the liberal arts approach as
Yeah.
well
Every
to
engineer
teaching
should
you.
read Socrates.
That's
Or
right.
or cover a town meeting and write it up for the local paper, because I tell you, it's a really hard skill. You got to
Yeah.
ask you don't know anything about it, so you have to ask a lot of good questions to get some meaning out of what you just
Yeah.
heard. So
All right. Well, thank you again, Wayne, for being on the show and being the first guest on our new podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
well, it was a pleasure and a lot of fun. And you asked great questions, Ken, so it's easy
Thank
to
you.
do it.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone else who's out there who is joining us today, and those of you who are watching the recording of this. Be sure to join us next week, where my guest will be Miguel Morgada from OneWeb, and he's going to talk about their experience becoming data-driven using DataOps. And he's a true user in the DataOps world with a lot of experience, and we're going to hear from him, and we'll talk about how they got there and how OneWeb made the move to the DataOps world. So thanks, everyone, and hope to see you next week.